2:40 right now.
It'll start.
Because we have a meeting at 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Sentinel Editorial Board candidate endorsement interview. We are for the mayoral race, Boca Raton. We are pleased to have both candidates, Commissioner Susan Haney and Commissioner Anthony Magis, with us today. Also joining us is Sun Sentinel Editorial Board member Chan Lowe, Sun Sentinel Editorial Page Editor Rosemary Goudreau, Sun Sentinel reporter Ann Gagas, and myself, Daniel Vasquez, also of the editorial board. Today we will be using the responses from the candidates to make the Sun Sentinel editorial endorsement, and we will be also taking questions from reporter Ann Gagas as well as our online viewers. We have 2 minutes per question, except for the first question. We'll give you each 3 minutes. We have a lot to cover, so we'll just jump in right away. The first question is, why should residents vote for you for mayor? Ms. Haney, if you'd go first.
Thank you. I appreciate this. This is an exciting venue, and I really am thrilled to be here. I feel that I'm the better candidate for mayor. I've been on the city council for 12 years. Prior to that, I had 5 years of service on the Planning and Zoning Board. I came up through the neighborhoods. I'm a 42-year resident of Boca Raton. I raised my family there. I run a small business there, and I love my community, and I've served it with honor. I was the president or a board member of every homeowners association I've ever lived in. That's 3 in our city. And I've been very active in the Federation of Homeowners, and again had a lot of board service. I have excelled on the city council, and especially in transportation planning. I'm currently the chair of the Palm Beach County Metropolitan Planning Organization, as well as the regional and the state. We have some issues in Boca Raton, but the community is really coming into its own. I mean, we have world-class health care at our hospital. We have the fastest growing university, Florida Atlantic University. We have a 30,000-seat stadium. We've attracted and retained over 5,000 jobs in the last 3 years. So things are going well in Boca. We do have some challenges, and I'd like to say that I was part of the council over the past 12 years that have brought some of these wonderful things to our community. We're struggling with balancing growth, as many communities are, and as well as dealing with the traffic that comes with those. But we've done some rather innovative approaches, like the Planned Mobility Initiative, which puts some housing and limited amounts of convenience retail near where our office park is, so that the corporations that are coming into town, their people will have places to live and places to shop, and will stay off of our roads. We're thrilled that Office Depot chose to keep their global headquarters in our community. That was a very big coup. And we just attracted the headquarters for Cancer Centers of America. They're relocating from Illinois. So we really have a lot going on in our city. We have a wonderful educated workforce with FAU, Palm Beach State College, as well as Lynn University, and a beautiful quality of life. Because of all the corporate citizens that we have, the lowest tax rate of any city in Palm Beach County, and we have the highest levels of service. So it's really a beautiful quality of life. We have a park system unlike any others. We have over 5 miles of publicly owned beaches, and Boca Raton is just a very, very special community. I've been part of that special community for many years. I've been an effective leader for the last 12 years, and I feel that I have the experience and the leadership to lead the city forward as the next mayor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Magis, same question.
Okay, thank you very much for a great question and for the opportunity to be here today. I'm 45 years old. I was born and raised in Coral Gables, Florida. I've been in Boca Raton for 18 years, so I am a native son of Florida. It's one of the reasons that I ran. I'm a public servant by trade. I've been a firefighter for 20 years with Palm Beach County for 10. So well, my first involvement in local politics was from a very residential point of view. I'm the founder of the HOA that I live within my neighborhood limits, and started watching city politics since I moved to town 18 years ago. Was a community activist and who got involved. So I feel that I'm the best person to represent this position because I bring balance to the council. And there is a very big chasm between the two directions that our council wants to go in. Unfortunately, I've been in the minority for the last few years, but I have won my last 2 elections. I'm in my 2nd term on the city council, and I've won both of those elections by about 10%, which is, I think, considered a landslide. So I think it is a mandate by the people who vote that they've heard my message, and that is one of responsible development versus high-density overdevelopment. So, you know, Ms. Haney did speak about some of the boards that she sits on. I sit on the Metropolitan Planning Organization with her. There is a great transition that's coming to a lot of Florida. I mean, our development is guided by how much capacity you could put on the roadways. So another way to do that is to start to develop a transit system. Well, nationwide transit is subsidized, and it doesn't take more than 2% of your new trips off the road. So what we've seen over the last 10 years in Boca Raton, but especially recently, is this increase in density with the idea that more people are going to live locally and not use their cars. They're going to walk, they're going to use their bicycle. So in my 5 years on council, I've been on votes of 1 against 4 that we've increased densities twofold. There's even one that's, I'll give you one specific example where somebody could build 220 units today. They want to build 650 units. So, you know, I bring a responsible approach to our development. If you, with that example, you pick up 2% of those new trips, those 400 new units, you know, you've introduced a heck of a lot more cars that are going to be on the road, and it really doesn't solve traffic. It creates traffic under the guise of, you know, to facilitate more development in the community. You know, fortunately, this is our biggest issue. Boca Raton is a great place to live. We have a very capable city manager. We do have the lowest millage rate for any full-service city in Florida. We came through one of the worst economic downturns in my lifetime, or the worst, without having to raise taxes and with $45 million in reserves. So it's a great place to live. As Ms. Haney said, you know, we've created or retained 5,200 jobs in the last 5 years with our economic development program. I have put it as a high priority on our list in our annual goal-setting session to have as our #1 community partners the Boca Regional Hospital, FAU, Lynn University, and so, you know, Boca is a great place to live. We don't have a lot of problems other than the greatest one that we're facing, and that's either we're going to become a metropolitan high-density hub, or I'm going to get elected and lead us into keeping Boca the beautiful place that everybody moved there for.
Excellent. All right, well, the next question. The mayor is the CEO of Boca Raton, a major enterprise with many employers. What experience and competence do you bring to the table to cope with the challenges that the position brings? We'll start with you.
Okay, and just for the analogy, the mayor is actually the chairman of the board. Our city manager, because we have a strong city manager form of government, our city manager is more of the CEO, and the council is more of the board of directors, with the mayor being the chair of the board. The city manager and the city attorney are the only 2 employees who are employees at will of the city council, the majority of the council. So we certainly provide policy direction, leadership, and vision for the direction that his staff is going to take the city in. I graduated from the University of Florida with a degree in sociology. I worked for 2 major retailers and had many employees under me. I worked for Burdines and the Sports Authority. I've been in the fire service for 20 years, where we operate under an incident command system, where we deal with split-second decisions that deal with human lives. So I'm used to operating under pressure and doing the right thing at the right time and for the right reasons. I'm an altruist. That's what firefighters are. We do the right things regardless of what it may bring in our next election. I also worked in business-to-business sales, and I was a sales manager for the largest manufacturer of fire and emergency vehicles, and my territory was Latin America and the Caribbean. So I certainly had to manage relationships with very key partners in all of the Latin American countries, which is very similar to managing relationships with our key partners in the city. So I believe I'm prepared to lead, the right age. I have you know, undying energy. I'm tireless. We had a fire. I was standing inside of a burning home at 3 o'clock this morning. and haven't gone to bed since. And I'm here with you and have a full schedule after this. And I'm excited and ready to do the job and have a huge grassroots organization behind me who is ready to see that change in direction in Boca Raton.
Excellent, thank you. Same question for you.
Same question for me. Well, you know, I have interesting roots in the city. As I said, you know, I've lived there for 42 years. I began my career as a traffic analyst for the city of Boca Raton. So I was a 10-year city employee. What a beautiful view from the council to know what it was like to work amongst the ranks. I'm also a licensed general contractor and a licensed property association manager. So I understand the needs of our homeowners and the challenges. And because of my general construction background, I understand development. I can read a set of plans. I can look at something and say, you know, that's too much. Those things are very important to running the city. But probably the most important thing is just I'm a consensus builder, and I think that's a really important attribute for the mayor to have. The mayor sets the tone for the city, truly. The mayor is the face of the city, although it's just 5 equal votes. The mayor has the ceremonial responsibilities and also is the one that's out there over at the Boca Resort greeting the CEOs that are coming to town, cutting the ribbons, presenting the proclamations, and as the deputy mayor for the last 5 years, I've been filling that role and assisting her. And it truly is the face of the city, and it requires a full-time job, although it is a part-time paid position. We've been very fortunate in our community over the last years to have full-time mayors. Stephen Abrams, who's now our county commissioner, and Mayor Susan Welchel have really dedicated and created a full-time. The city meetings are just part of it. When you add in all the social and ceremonial portions of it, you know, to really serve the citizens of our community, you need to be out amongst them. You need to be with them. You need to be visiting the schools and visiting the businesses and attending the Rotary Club and going to the Elks Club. That's the beauty of serving the community. And I have that connection with the community. And again, I've been on the city council. I was on for 6 years. I was term limited and then came back and I was happy that the Sun Sentinels endorsed me every time I've run and had an election. So.
Thank you.
Can I follow up on a question? Mr. May just said that the biggest issue is development or overdevelopment. Can you talk about that?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we've created such a beautiful community. There's a lot of individuals that want to come here. I think one of our other biggest concerns is fiscal sustainability because of the fire and police pension issues. But the development, most of the intense development in our community that people are so concerned about is in our downtown. I don't really hear anyone else complaining about anywhere else in town. And our downtown in 1987 was created as a DRI, a Development of Regional Impact. Has a special set of rules. It allows for more height and more density than other areas in the city. It's the council's responsibility to balance. There's 2 buildings coming out of the ground now. After a recession, nothing was built. And you know, it appears that we're having, you know, some growing pains. And that's going to be the council's challenge to balance. Although our last 2 projects that we've approved have been 1-story retail. We were just, the residential are bringing some more people to the downtown to support. We've also attracted Trader Joe's, Lord & Taylor, iPick Theater, Jazz is, because we are bringing some more people to our downtown. A vibrant downtown needs some residents, and that's what we're playing. We're playing catch up and adding those residents so we can have that vibrancy and also to maintain these wonderful businesses in Meisner Park.
If I could follow up, and I'd like to ask you this question too, Mr. Majors, but first, Susan, I wanted to ask you, development is something that I think is a matter of great concern to Boca residents. In fact, seeing all those construction cranes alarms some. I don't think you would disagree that you have a reputation as being pro-development in the past. I would like to know, since the mayor in this city is less of a actual functionary because it's a strong city manager system, but the mayor, I believe, is first among equals, would have a vision that would be communicated to, in other words, I think that the 2 of you are vying for an office that has a philosophical component to it. I'd like to know from you, going into the future, how you would feel about further development. I realize that the buildings that are coming out of the ground now have been approved already, and now there's a problem. I want to know how aggressive you would be about future development, or perhaps you put the brakes on it. And I know this is a question that Mr. Magis is dying to answer, but first I'd like to ask you.
No, and I appreciate that, Shannon. And the truth is that it's all about balance and reasonable growth. And that's the, like I said, that's the council's challenge in the downtown, because it was entitled with 8 million square feet of buildable rights. That was a legacy that was given to us, and we're having to deal with that. There's 2 buildings coming out of the ground currently, and you know, as people have said, there are concerns. Where there's concerns about traffic, and there's concerns about how much is too much. But I will say that those 2 residential projects are being brought on the heels of now retail to service that. And we've seen this over the years. There was a time in Boca where we were very aggressive with office space and then ended up with too much. So that's our challenge, is to balance it. And I understand it, and I see it, and I've been there a long time, and I know where we've come. Now, I wouldn't characterize myself as pro-development. If you look at my 17-year voting record between 5 years on planning and zoning and 12 years on the city council, I've said no plenty of times. So it's just, since the recession ended, there was a lot of pent-up demand. A lot of these projects were approved before the recession, and they just didn't commence. So we're just playing catch-up with that backlog. But I certainly hear it. I'm out on the streets. I hear people's concerns, and I do agree. I had asked the city manager for a snapshot of where we are in the balance of how many units, how much buildable rights are left, how much office. It's office equivalency. And we have that snapshot. We're not at the full 8 million, but we're getting close. And I certainly understand that we need to be very careful and be very sensitive to our constituency. And if they think that that's changing the vision of our community, then we need to address it.
Anthony?
Certainly, it's a lot to pack into to 2 minutes. And first, I'd like to just take a moment to respond to your follow-up question to Mrs. Haney, and you know, Mrs. Haney spoke of the idea that all of the development is concentrated in the downtown, and it was planned that way. And I don't want to create acrimony here, and I certainly have respect for Ms. Haney, and I don't have, you know, I can like her as a person and not agree with her politics, but there is a big component of the story that she leaves out, and this is not the first time when she speaks of all the development being in the downtown, but our council did create 5 other areas called planned mobility, which was mentioned. 4 of them are more significant, and they're like 4 mini downtowns. So the traffic problem, as stated, is not just in our downtown. We have another downtown, and it's, you know, near the intersection of Glades and St. Andrews, or Glades and 95, and anybody who lives in the western communities off of Yamato or Clintmore will tell you that there's a ton of traffic out there as well in the peak hours around Glades Road all the time. And those are some of the planned mobility areas. So these are other mini downtowns, if you will. And I think anybody who drives across our city, we're only 5 miles wide by 5 miles long. So we've packed in a lot. I've pleaded on council, not just for Ms. Haney to say no, and the other council members to say no, but even for concessions in planning these other zones. And I've certainly lost, even though I know I was going to vote no. I wanted to see concessions where typical setbacks are 25 feet, they went to 15 feet. Where building heights were 35 or 50, they got bumped up to 85 feet high. Many areas where they just you know, maximize the densities and intensities that get built in these 4 mini downtowns that are going to affect the city. So, you know, to answer your question, you know, the traffic is a major component, and the divide between Ms. Haney and myself is, Ms. Haney does sit on a lot of other boards, Metropolitan Planning Organization at the county and state level, the League of Cities at the county and state level. She works very closely with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Agency. They do a lot of good, but they have a philosophy that really leans towards increasing the density and the traffic, the transit-oriented development. So, you know, I'm so happy this is on Sun Sentinel, because when I ran the first time in 2009, I would say, I'm the herald, I'm telling you what's coming, because back then it had a different title. Now it's something different, and we're calling it planned mobility or transportation-oriented, you know, transit-oriented development. It's not only affecting Boca Raton, it's affecting every city from Miami up both coasts, but especially from West Palm to Miami. You know, there's a train that's coming down the tracks. It'll be novel. I think we should develop a robust transit system, but I don't think we should gamble our future on increasing densities to make that happen. They created a definition in Tallahassee, TOD, transit-oriented development. Treasure Coast is going to be suggesting the land development changes around the stations for these trains that come down, which they're going to increase densities within as much as a half-a-mile radius of the station. So if you think of the stations that are going to go into not only Boca Raton and Fort Lauderdale, but Pompano eventually, Deerfield, Delray, Boynton. So, you know, any other commissioners that are living or any other residents that are watching this should look into it. So, you know, the difference between Ms. Haney and I is she supports that type of development 100%, and I don't. In 6 years on the council, in Ms. Haney's voting record, I cannot find one instance on a project that she has voted no, and in her 12 years, there's only 2% of the time from our research that she voted no.
Thank you.
Are you saying you're not a fan of transit-oriented development?
What I'm saying is we should develop a robust transit system, but we should not increase the densities because all of a sudden we have a train or a bus system. Nationwide, I've traveled to 40 states and hundreds of cities over the last 3 years on my own time and on my own dime, and I've seen where they've implemented the transit strategies. The transit system and the buses and the trains are always subsidized, and I don't want to put that on the backs of our taxpayer, and it doesn't work. Even if you have a full train and a full bus, you are going to trigger so much more congestion on the roadways. You would do that in the name of developing a metropolitan area. Now, if that's what the majority of the citizens of Boca Raton and taxpayers want, is to transition to this major metropolitan area, so be it. But the people who keep putting me in office have indicated they don't want that. So I do think we should develop a transit system and not bankrupt our city to do it. But I don't think we should be triggering a double and triple densities or quadruple to make that happen.
Well, I'd like to rebut that. First of all, I think that Mr. May just mischaracterized the Planned Mobility Initiative. The areas of the city that we have specified, one was the northwest area that was really resident driven. The residents of Broken Sound came to the city of Boca Raton and said, we are owners of this golf course and we have this office park here. We have a lot of vacancy because they were built under the Light Industrial Research Park back in the 70s. They were corporate office headquarters, and they just are not Class A buildings. We're attracting all this wonderful new corporations to our community, and they want Class A buildings. There's plenty of land up there. The planned mobility, and it's an overlay district, it's not a mandate. You can build under the existing Light Industrial Research Park zoning. We did not remove it, but if you choose to come in, it offers you the flexibility to add some retail parts, so your employees don't have to get in the car and drive to go eat lunch or go to a dry cleaners, and also some limited residential nearby. These workers come in, they want to live somewhere, and they'd like to live near where they work. So that's the whole issue of the planned mobility. We've only exercised the land development on the one. The other one has a master plan, and the other areas we haven't even addressed yet. So it's a mischaracterization to say that we've over-densified the city. And as far as the transportation issues, you know, and Mr. Majors was on the MPO the other day when I led the charge, we took a bunch of roads off the long-range plan. We cannot fix our traffic problems by adding a lot of asphalt. It ruins the quality of life. Nobody wants to try and cross an 8-lane road. So we did, and it was a unanimous vote at the council to the MPO to remove some of these roads off of the long range. So now what are we going to do? Well, let's find a way to address our traffic, and we can do it through you know, signal coordination and smart signals and adaptive signals, and we can do it through intersection improvements. We can get more throughput and more capacity out of the roads without adding all that asphalt. But the other part of that is going to be a transit system. All Aboard Florida, I'll disagree with you, is a privately funded initiative that's going to put the infrastructure in place so that the cities, through the DOT, can have a commuter rail service. And I think it's really exciting. The Treasure Coast may be looking and siting stations, but the ultimate densities and intensities will be the responsibility of the City Council, not Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. They can draw all the beautiful pictures they want, but home rule is on our dais and will continue to be there.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to another reader question on a different subject that did come up, pensions. The reader asks, a major challenge for the next administration are the $129 million of unfunded pensions for police and firefighters. How do you plan to cope with this? Would you start?
Certainly. You know, thank God, one of the best ways and the easiest way we're going to cope with the issue is the cooperation that we get from our public safety employees. Police and fire have been cooperative over the years. They've been cooperative in my 5 years on council. I've voted on 2 contracts, and that was to take a total of $3.8 million away from police and fire that they've voluntarily came back to the table over 2 contracts to give up. The number that keeps coming up, the $29 million of unfunded liability, is a spin that's coming from a newsletter that is misstating the facts. That number is based on the market from September 30th of 2012. They've never updated it. The market has recovered significantly since then and made significant gains. So we're going to do it through cooperation. Police and fire have gladly come back to the table, and a lot of that is through my efforts. If anybody understands the importance of police, the sustainability of police and fire pensions, not only am I a person who understands that network of people and can gain their cooperation and have done so in the past and presently, but the firefighters and police of our city, those are the 2 pensions that are under the most scrutiny, they want to see it be sustainable. So they've been villainized by this newsletter and by our current council, that they are the problem. When, meantime, they came back this March with a letter willing to open their contract based on giving back $5 million annually, not $5 million one time, $5 million annually. That's a number that was generated by our very capable city manager who brought us through the downturn in the economy with $45 million in reserve and not having to raise taxes, and nobody in our city saw a decrease in their city services. So I worked with police and fire and the city manager to come up with a menu of where they can make concessions. Based on that, they submitted a letter saying they were willing to open their contract early and start negotiating. And in an executive session, Mrs. Haney, led the charge on that to say, I want them to open, but this is coming up several months too early. And coincidentally, it's pushed it into the campaign season. And Mrs. Haney's camp wants to hang pensions around my neck. So I will remind you of the record because, even on the development questions, I can, load you down with facts. In my 5 years, I've voted on 2 contracts. It was to take $3.8 million away from police and fire. If there's a sustainability problem, it happened over an evolutionary period. Not only did my opponent, but other council members have sat on that council for over 12 years. Mrs. Haney voted 14 times. Yes, on every single contract to create the pension problem that we have today. I voted on 2. It was to lead towards correcting it.
We're going to need to give her a chance to respond. But
certainly. So I'm proud of my record. It's certainly a solvable problem, and police and fire have been nothing but cooperative.
Thank you. Could you tackle the same?
My turn. We do have a sustainability issue with the pension. Of course, I will disagree with my opponent. It wasn't because of the giveaway program on the city council. A lot of those benefits are dictated by Florida statute. $175, $185 that we accept. We also have to give additional benefits based on that. So that's where those numbers came from. As we were looking, and the city manager's done a great job of doing long-range financial planning for the city, we see this big gap coming in the future. And instead of kicking the can down the road, a majority of the council in an executive session, and my opponent was not one of them, said, let's hire an independent actuary to look at these plans and come up with strategies that we can incorporate when the contract opens to get this to be sustainable for our communities. So we don't have these huge unfunded liabilities out there that many cities are struggling with. There's been pension reform in many cities, and this is one of the things that we talk about at the League of Cities. That has been a priority of theirs, a legislative priority. We don't seem to be getting any legislative relief from the state. But we certainly do. And this actuary came up with a whole list of items of things that we can do to change that pension plan and get it to be sustainable.
Which do you support?
The ones that he's outlined.
No, the ones that you support that he's outlined. I'm surely you don't agree with all of them, but
no, he listed about 6 of them, and we will sit at the table over collective bargaining, and we will hammer these things out as to ones. Some of them are no more pooling of overtime, smoothing out the pension period over more years, moving the retirement date. So it's a whole array of different strategies. But my opponent has an inherent conflict. He is a firefighter. His brother is a firefighter for the city. He belongs to the IAFF. That's the union that we're going to be negotiating across the table with. And that's an inherent conflict of interest that he has when it comes to these public safety issues. You know, he may, you know, because he's in that profession, he most definitely has knowledge and certainly understands because he's collecting a pension. But is that the type of person you want representing the citizens of Boca Raton? So, I mean, I think that's a real issue. We have the tools to make this sustainable, and when that contract opens in September, the council and those unions are going to have to hammer this thing out and get it sustainable for the future of our city.
May I rebut?
Could you take 30 seconds on the conflict of interest?
I'll do my best on the 32nd part. But the, you know, once again, we're mixing up the facts here. Let me start by the IAFF is similar to the United States, and then the individual locals are actually like the states. And as much as we don't affect Georgia's laws and they don't affect Florida's, I'm a member of the professional firefighters of Palm Beach County, not the city of Boca Raton. It's not the same union sitting across the table that our city management is going to be negotiating with. If I do have a conflict of interest, it's pretty odd that I've taken $3.8 million away from the police and firefighters over the last 2 years in the only 2 contracts that I've voted on. So there is no conflict of interest per the state. That would be similar to saying, as Ms. Haney mentioned when she opened her in her opening statements, that she's a general contractor, but she votes on development issues. My career is to be a firefighter and help people that are sick and dying or in need of an emergency, response. So that's what I do for a living. It doesn't mean that I can't sit on local government in my city and make responsible decisions, just like Mrs. Haney can sit in local government and make decisions based on development because she is a general contractor. I just think that's not. So let's talk about some of the facts. The independent actuaries' 6 bullets, which were more, I'm so proud to say that I'm the one who brought those to the city manager. When I told you that I asked the city manager 1 year ago, can you come up with a number that is going to make our pension sustainable? And he said, I can figure that out. And it was $5 million annually between police and fire. I said, well, can you find out where you would take that money to where it would be like a menu of options that they can choose from so that they're not all going to take it in one place and it'll make the negotiations go more smooth. They can pick and choose. Some of those were the variables that go into calculating a pension, your years of service, the multiplier, the 3%, the COLA. It's interesting that all of those showed up in this report. So, and when we talk about an independent actuary, the city manager had said, I have to put these numbers to fact. He went out to 2 independent actuaries and to make sure his numbers were right before the firefighters submitted their letter to open. At the meeting where the rest of the council wanted to hire their own outside actuary, I had asked them, have you taken any time in the last year? I made them show their hands. How many people have met with the police and firefighter unions to discuss their pensions with them? Not one of them did. So I said, why don't we postpone and in the next 2 weeks before our next meeting, meet with police and firefighters and see where they stand. They didn't do it. They moved forward with their independent actuary, which was fine. And like I said, all of those bullets are the bullets that I came up with that the city manager had handed over to that actuary. All of those variables of where they can give back. So once again, the record speaks for itself. I voted twice to take $3.8 million away. My opponent has voted 14 times in 12 years to create the pension system that is there.
Let me just follow up on that. Are you saying that you would support a later retirement date, or that you would support changes in step increases? What specifics do you support in how union contracts are negotiated now that might keep pension healthy?
Well, I tell you that is the that is going to be an effect of collective bargaining. So would I support it? Certainly, absolutely. I've already voted twice.
To raise the retirement age?
If that is what comes out of the negotiating process, yes.
I'm just asking you, if you were the mayor, would you support raising the retirement age?
If that's what came out of the negotiating process, yes, I would support it. But I can tell you this. Ask yourself, do you want I know plenty of 55 and 60-year-old people who are absolutely in shape. But when your family is in jeopardy on a second floor, would you want a 60-year-old firefighter versus a 25-year-old firefighter or 35-year-old firefighter to come in and try to rescue you? There's something called the Denver drill. You can look it up, where a firefighter perished right under a windowsill in the first floor bedroom. So every firefighter across the country has practiced the Denver drill. It takes 12 firefighters to get one person that's about 200 pounds with all their gear out of that window. I know it doesn't sound like a hard task, but that's what you're up to. So would I support it? Yes, but there's many other variables. I'll tell you two of the variables that I've already supported, and it was my suggestions. Many people don't know that the public safety employees contribute 10% to their own retirement. They were contributing 9.2. At my urging, they added 1% to that, 10%, to make it 10.2. They were also due by contract 2% raises 2 years in a row that they gave back. So in this menu of options, it does change the COLA. It changes many things. Would I support it? If that's what came out of the negotiating process, absolutely. I would hope we don't get to a place where the city's leadership and the firefighters dig in their heels and we go to impasse and make this contract take 3 years to pass. I think through cooperation, we can get to sustainability with cooperation and get it done by October, or, when this contract is up.
I'd like to rebut that as well. Again, we're 5 equal votes. For him to take credit and say, well, he was the one that delivered these things and he was the one that saved all the money. Well, excuse me, I've been at the table many a times with the council as we worked through these issues. The actuary came up with the tools that we need to get this thing right. And the actuary that he was, the $5 million, who even knew where that number came from? I tell you, if we do all these, requirements that the actuary has presented to us, we're going to save a lot more than $5 million a year. And I think that's what where we have to get to. That number came from the fire unions. That's what they were willing to give back. As we all know, in negotiation, you start somewhere and move back. So they threw that number out there very quickly and very easy. I contend that there's more money there to be saved, and utilizing the menu of items that the actuary has provided with us, I think is the way to go.
I absolutely have to weigh in.
I think
here.
we're going to have to go into
okay, because I have to keep the facts straight, because my opponent has taken many liberties with the facts. She says she's against overdevelopment and that she votes no when she's always voted yes. She says she hasn't raised taxes in her time in office when she has. And now she's saying that the $5 million came from the firefighters. And where did we get that number? It came out of nowhere. I'm telling you, it came from the city manager. I'm a man of my word. It came from a capable city manager who not only manages a $120 million annual operating budget, but the overall assets to the city are like $535 million. We weathered the storm without raising taxes. We have the lowest millage rate in any full-service city in the state, and we went through that financial storm with $45 million in our reserves. So that number came from a very capable CEO, city manager. He's the one who came up with the $5 million. Police and fire just happened to be cooperative. Mrs. Haney, on the other hand, this newsletter that's been published about 25 times with misrepresenting the facts, one of the other candidates, and I'll let you figure out who it was, went to them after the second newsletter came up and said, where are you getting your numbers? How do I know they're accurate? And they said, Mrs. Haney has given them to us. This is a whole thing to get us into campaign season and try to have a campaign on misinformation, and I'm not going to stand for it.
Well, this is the most pressing fiscal sustainability issue for our community. It is certainly not political. And these women in the community are just constituents that have concern. I'm not feeding them anything that isn't public record. And the city manager, he may have come up with that number, but he certainly did not instruct the council not to hire an independent actuary to get at these sustainability tools that we are about to take over. So I think that's a mischaracterization, and I really don't appreciate you saying that I don't tell the truth, because there's nothing further from the truth than that.
All right, let's go to another question.
Sure.
I have another reader question. Did you want to jump in? Or?
No, I'll wait.
Does Boca need for any reason to raise taxes, to deal with police and fire pensions, or any other reason?
You want me to start?
Yes.
I've
Please.
been on the council for 12 years. I've never voted for a millage increase in those 12 years, and I don't intend to start. That's why we're having the whole sustainability discussion at this point, to make sure that we don't have to raise our millage. We have the lowest millage of any full-service city in Palm Beach County, and our residents expect that. They expect high-level services and low tax rates. That's one of the reasons why we attract so many of the corporations to our city, because of that. Our millage is 3.7. That includes our debt service. I mean, that's wonderful as compared to some places that have 9 and higher millage rates. So I prefer to have government run in a leaner way. We are able to have a better delivery of our municipal services by utilizing technology and by streamlining, and that's the side of the equation that, that I would prefer to focus on, not just raising. That's the easy way out, is just to raise the millage and do it. But you know, our millage is only a very small fraction of our revenues. The rest of our revenues come from, you know, differing fees and through quality development payments and things of that nature. So ad valorem's just one piece of the pie. But again, the sustainability of those that pension liability is a must to keep us financially sustainable.
Anthony?
Thank you very much. I think that's a great question, and the answer, the simple answer, is no. We don't have to raise taxes right now, and we don't have to raise taxes to support public employee pensions. The biggest hit in the economic downturn, you know, that came in 2008, the city smooths. We do what's called smoothing, so we take that loss over a 4-year period. We also take the gains over a 4-year period. So where some of these pension sustainability issues came up was the smoothing from the great loss in 2008. We started to turn the corner in 2012. We've seen gains that haven't even started to show up on the books because we're going to take them over 4 years. So, you know, let's all pray, not just for Boca Raton, but for our entire country, that the market continues to go up. So at this point, we don't have to raise taxes. And I'll keep this answer short for your behalf, but, you know, we're back to the you know, to the same issue about, you know, one of the two of us is telling the truth. And I'll tell you right now, and I'll tell the listeners, you know, don't take my word for it. Look at the voter file. And this is, I didn't even pull up these numbers myself. I have an independent study group that is researching the numbers from 1999 to 2005. Mrs. Haney sat on the council and increased millage rate by 15%. And then from 2008 to 2013, she also, the millage rate has gone up 12.5%. So, you know, with our debt service, you know, that has gone up, she has participated in increasing the millage rate. She has also voted to increase fees, and our fees have gone up dramatically. Parking you know, she voted to add parking meters that everybody hates, and all of our visitors who come to our downtown area that don't know we have parking meters go home with a nice $35 ticket. They added red light cameras, which was shown by the state now to increase rear-end collisions. I voted no because I couldn't in good conscience know that I possibly sent somebody to the hospital in a rear-end collision when a lot of this is for revenue generation. So the short answer is no, we do not need to raise taxes.
Well, I need to rebut that because that is not true. There may have been some voter approved debt service that increased that millage, but I never voted for a tax increase. My opponent, however, did, and he also said during that vote that it would be egregious not to raise them at the time. So, you know, that's just not true, Anthony, to say that I voted for tax increases because you have an independent group doing your studying. I think
I encourage anybody that's listening to go and research.
You go back and look. I have never voted for a millage increase in 12 years. I will stand by that. I will swear on a Bible, and you can go back and read the record because that's just a mischaracterization based on voter-approved debt service that might have, you know, clicked it up a two.
The record will speak for itself.
Well,
along
the record
with your
will
vote no on development when you haven't voted no in 6 years.
Thank you very much. We understand both your arguments. Let's move on to something else since we're talking about revenue. If I could butt in here for a second. Meisner Park. We have a situation here where, you know, a contract was let many years ago and it was disadvantageous to the city. What's done is done. You know, there's no point going back and seeking recrimination for that. However, Meisner Park is costing the city more money every year, I believe, to, well, in terms of services that are being provided. I realize there's an operator there, but the city is responsible for certain things. I'm just wondering, in both your cases, do you have either, well, let's start with you, Susan.
Sure.
Do you have a possible solution to this problem? Because I think it's going to go on until something like 2024, this contract that the city's locked into, with no increase in the rent. Do you have any idea
Sure.
of how it could?
Well, the bonds are paid off in the next few years, so that will be a good thing. There's been enough development in the downtown now that we're not writing a check every year. We have a sinking fund that we fund, and now the CRA is starting to pay the city back. So it's slowly becoming more sustainable. Since we took over the amphitheater, the park's really come to life, and there are lots of things. Like I say, Lord and Taylor came back to Meisner Park. We have IPIC theaters, we have Jazz-Is, and it's become a real vibrant hub for our downtown. Like you say, we're stuck. We can't refinance those bonds because they've been refinanced the maximum times. But we see the finish line, and we just have to get there with it and continue to keep the place rented. GGP's been a good partner. I mean, it's such a success story now that we're having a parking problem that we need to deal with, and we need to site a downtown central parking structure like Delray has. We need one. Downtown's become a wonderful place and people want to be there, so we're going to have to deal with that. But the Meisner financial issues, we see the finish line with those. When those bonds are paid off, we'll have additional revenues, and that's a very positive thing for a long-term vision to get to that point.
Let me just butt in for a minute
Sure.
here. I think Chan was talking about the rent that GGP pays.
Oh, the NOI.
Hasn't gone up in 20 years.
Yeah.
Do you see a way out, while the city's costs of the little lights, the maintenance have gone up?
We're doing an audit right now of the NOI to make sure that we're getting our fair share based on that. That's the net operating dollars, and that's where the income comes from, the net operating income from GGP. So we're currently having an audit right now to make sure that we're getting our get what we're owed from those buildings.
Do you have any differing feelings on this?
Yeah, I think there's more that we could do. And just to correct the record, the contract's not up in 2024. It's a 100-year, 99-year ground lease, so it's really 2085. We collect $1.2 million without an escalator, and somewhere long before my time, the council agreed in the contract that at either 5 years or 10 years, something like that, that we're going to take over the maintenance of the interior. So if you drive through Meisner in the morning to get your Starbucks and see them pressure washing the cobblestone street or cutting the grass, taxpayers are paying for that about $800,000 annually. That leaves us with about $400,000 that is eaten up in other expenses when we provide police services or things down there for events. So the city really is not making a lot. We take that payment that we get, the $1.2 million, and all of our tax increment that we collect in our downtown goes to paying the debt on Meisner Park. So it really is a lopsided deal for the taxpayers. Other cities use their tax increment, the taxes they collect off their downtown area, to do special projects. So it's really unfortunate for Boca Raton that we don't have that pool of resources that we can do other projects in our downtown, that we're putting that money into paying off the bonds. There's a couple things that are also unfortunate from my perspective, is that there is an option to purchase. So after the taxpayers pay off this multi-million dollar, I think $68 million bond, the leaseholder can buy the property from the city at a fair market rate. Now they are supposed to pay whichever's greater, whether it's the $1.2 million or their profits that are greater. So we are doing an audit. They get to write off their expenses. That's the other caveat in the contract. So they can write off any expenses they want. I mean, they're constantly having to maintain. You can imagine what it costs to maintain Meisner Park, so they can show that they don't have a profit. When in fact, and listen, they're a great community partner. GGP has been working with the city, and it put Boca Raton on the map. I mean, Meisner Park is really, everybody goes there. It's a great place. So I'm not speaking of it negatively, but the financials are a struggle for the city. But you can imagine what it costs to maintain Meisner. But they took something like $12 million back to their state in profits off of the park, and it would have been nicer. So one thing we can do, and I have a copy of all the leases on CD at home, is if we had a majority of council who wanted our legal team review the leases and see if there's anywhere where we can make changes or exercise a little more of our right. We should be doing that, but that hasn't been passed or supported by a majority of the council. That's one. The other thing we could do, aside from Meisner Park, is not get into similar leases. So when we talk about consensus building, there's one person in town, I won't mention his name, he's the chief lobbyist and visionary and land use attorney for the city, represents every single project. You can figure out who he is on your own, and so can the viewers. He was running the amphitheater. He came to the city in the downturn in the economy because the amphitheater went dark for a year, and he asked for $1.2 million annually in programming dollars and a $30,000 a month management fee. Watch the meeting, don't take my word for it, but the balance of the council was ready to move forward. I pushed and said absolutely not. If we're going to put that kind of money into operating an amphitheater, we're going to take it over, which we did, and the amphitheater has been running in the black for the last 3 years. Another developer came forward and wanted a piece of our beach land. It's public land that's owned by the Beach and Parks District, but they wanted the city to tell Beach and Parks that it's so valuable to have a hotel in our downtown, we want to give that hotel a private beach club on the beach, and we were about to give them a sweetheart lace, which I jumped up and down and made sure did not happen. And the last one is on the Wildflower property that we own on the water, where somebody came forward with a restaurant called Bricktops, and they were proposing to give the city $450,000 annually, but the fine print in the contract said that the city would be responsible for maintaining the hardscape, which is the parking lot, and the landscape, installing it and maintaining it into perpetuity, the seawall, and a prepared building pad, which takes that $450,000 and we start putting in millions of dollars. And so it was a lopsided deal, and I had to push for a public meeting where the public can attend and a public planning process of the property, which gave us the RFP, request for proposal, that we're doing. So there is something we can do about Meisner Park, that's review the contracts and make sure we don't get into any other bad leases.
I'm glad you mentioned the Wildflower property, because I wanted to know what each of you thought about the Houston's deal, and whether, what do you think about that, if it falls through, what you'd like to do with the Wildflower property afterwards. So why don't we talk to you?
I'll start, and just to finish up on the Meisner Park question, the parking revenues of the meters that are on the roads in there, actually they took the people that were parking there, that were the residents and the shop holders, and opened up that parking for the public. It's been a great success. You can still park in the garages for free, and it's been a great revenue producer, so that was a positive. The Wildflower, we all agreed to purchase that property. It was a unanimous vote. It was one of our goal-setting items for years to have an entertainment or an attractor there on the water with a park component. They came forward. We went through one set of RFP process that was just an ROI. It wasn't an actual process. And we had several different scenarios presented to us. We recently fine-tuned the real RFP, and Houston's was the only proposer. And when they came forward at the meeting the other day to present, I was the first council member out in front to say, unless they can provide adequate parking, unless they can provide access, and they can deal with their traffic, this isn't going to work. And they're back at the drawing board trying to make that work at this point in time. So there's been no rubber stamp. There is no one that's going to take away the boat ramp parking that my opponent went over there and stirred everybody up and said, they're going to pave your paradise over here. The truth is that we sent Houston's back. They're very motivated. They would love to come to Boca Raton. We don't have any waterfront restaurants in our city. We have one that's open to the public, the Bridge Hotel. Other than that, we just don't have it. Everything's residential in our community. So this would be a wonderful attractor. It would also help our downtown by having a destination on the water. And I think it's a positive thing if we can mitigate these issues. But unless they can park it, it's not going to happen.
Is that accurate that you told people they would pave over Silver Palm Park?
Absolutely not. So, we're developing a track record here of saying things that are not true. I have an old boat that's a 1983 boat that has sat on my trailer on the side of my house and has been out twice since January of 2012. I have not been to city I drove through Silver Palm Park about 3 days ago, but I haven't, never up until the hearing when we were going to discuss the RFP have I been there. What my opponent and the balance of the council that I have not been able to find consensus with doesn't understand is that the decisions they're making make enough people mad that they don't take Anthony Magis to go stir people up. There's I think 485 boat ramp sticker holders or 585 ramp sticker holders that are concerned. And when they heard what was going on, I believe they read Ms. Gagis's article about the decision that was made, they discussed it amongst themselves. It's not just the people who launched their boat in Silver Palm Park. It's every peripheral business that has anything to do with it. Boat charters, bait and tackle shops, dive shops, and the word spread. Our boating committee, we are a seaside community. The word spread like wildflower of the discussion at our meeting. That meeting was put online. Mrs. Haney says she led the charge. I did not vote against Houston's, and I will give you my opinion on Houston's. There were 4 choices that night. Direct the city manager to process the lease, postpone, reject the proposal from Houston's, or do nothing. The balance of the council was saying direct the city manager to negotiate the lease. In the proposal, which was a 3-ring binder, and my opponent says the parking was never under threat, there by Houston's that parks regular vehicles on the boat ramp site, and that was cause for concern. So I said, let's postpone, let them show us a site plan that shows us where they're going to park the cars. Mrs. Haney's statements, in fact, as viewable in the meeting, was they're going to have to show all those details as a matter of the lease. Anyway, let's move forward with processing the lease. And the mayor says, I second that. Even though it wasn't a motion, the mayor does say, I second that. And that's what's moved forward with on the initial meeting. 2 weeks later, when my opponent realized it was a hot potato issue, came back with a proposal to withdraw that and to say, let's postpone until they show where the parking is going to go.
No, that's a
I would like to
mischaracterization.
just finish my answer, if that's okay. So that is where all of the controversy about the boat ramp versus Houston's came up. Didn't take me going over there to do that. I was proposing that we postpone because this council has a track record of getting the ball to the gold line. There's no worry bringing in something that's prepackaged, huge projects, get them to the final hearing to where the public doesn't have a chance to weigh in. It's the reason I run. I don't want to be a politician. I'm a public servant. I'm a resident of the city. I run and I sit in this seat because I want to protect the city that I live in, and that's the reason that I'm there. We held a very public meeting about that property. That was at my urging when we didn't move forward with Bricktops, and I told the council we promised the citizens a public planning charrette, and we gave it to them, and about 85 people showed up. I believe it's on tape. The city clerk should have it on file. 5 restaurateurs showed up, Guanabana's, Houston's, Bricktops, and 2 others. And the rest of them were community people. About 2 people said they wanted a restaurant. Everybody else said they wanted a park. But they did say they would like some type of concession that they can get something to eat. Well, the deputy city manager took the opportunity to combine concessions with a park to say that the majority of those people wanted a restaurant. Well, that's not what they wanted if you view that meeting. I didn't jump up, my counterparts.
Would you like to see a restaurant there?
I'll tell you what, we have a growing community. The same boat ramp has been there all these years and has never expanded, yet the number of people with boats and boat ramp stickers has. And I really think the right thing to do, it's our only piece of waterfront property in the downtown that the public can access. To give it to a private restaurant, now listen, I know that's not going to be popular with a lot of people because I've had a lot of calls of people who want it to be a Houston's that you can use a couple of times a month. But I think the property could be something as an asset to our city that our community can use every day to give our public access to our waterfront in the downtown area. Whether you want to go well-heeled and dressed like this in the evening, or that it operates as an expansion to the boat ramp and allows the public more access. To turn it over to a private company with private valets and young waiters and waitresses who want to turn tables, as for profit. Our mayor says that it needs to be revenue producing. Well, none of our other parks are revenue producing. Why does this one, the crown jewel of our publicly owned land, have to? We don't own, many other.
Trying to jump in.
Okay, I think I've said enough. So.
Well, at goal setting, it was discussed to be an attraction, a restaurant with a park component that my opponent supported every time. And when we purchased the property, it was a unanimous vote to purchase the property. It was a resolution. You can go back and read that record too. The truth is that yes, 98% of our community would like to have a waterfront restaurant there to enjoy and take their boats to. The boat ramp, interesting that we talk about protecting that boat ramp. Do you know that the boat ramp is a de facto county park because the city accepted $146,000 from the county years ago, and anyone in Palm Beach County can buy a $30 sticker and use it. 45% of those sticker holders are not city residents. So if you want to protect that boat ramp for our residents, let's pay the county back and make it a city park. That's the way to protect that boat ramp. But it's the whole concept of an attraction with a park component is why it's going to be so difficult for Houstons to park it, because it has to have a meaningful park component to the restaurant plan, and that's going to be the challenge. And we looked at the one in Pompano and we saw what they have there. We envisioned something a lot grander and a lot better as far as the park component. But I think it's one thing that our city is missing, is not to have a waterfront venue that people can go by boat to and enjoy. And it would also be a wonderful thing for our downtown.
We're getting down to the last 10 minutes,
Can
or 5
I
minutes.
just jump in with one more? There's an intersection right there between the boat ramp and this wildflower property where the Houstons would go. It's right at the base of the bridge where 10,000 residents who live on the beach come off of the beach. My opponent, along with the rest of the council, voted to approve, I think, a 378 or 366 unit apartment complex, mostly one bedroom. They did not put a left turn lane on Palmetto Park Road to lead into the project. On that existing corner, there's a Trattoria Romano restaurant that everybody loves and is very busy all of the time. There is a ton of traffic congestion today at that intersection. I just sat at that intersection 2 nights ago, and it is almost a catastrophe. The apartment complex that Susan approved hasn't even been built yet. During that hearing, the residents, and I was blamed to bring out all of the angry, NIMBYs at that point, and they're not NIMBYs, they're QUIMBYs. They want quality in their backyard. And of course, I said at the same time, at that point, the decisions that this council is making is enough to make these people mad that they don't even need an Anthony Majors to exist to come out. But they did, and what they asked during the hearings was that they perform a traffic study on that intersection, and they never did. The council, when these citizens hired their own land use attorney, their own traffic engineer, and at the second hearing, the mayor said, public comment is already closed, and the great expense that they went to hire their own traffic engineer to show that that intersection was going to be a problem was not even heard, and this council refused to do a study of that intersection. So in a case study, I was sitting at an intersection 2 nights ago where they have moved the white line where you stop way back because people coming off the beach to turn onto that roadway swing into that lane. The valet from the already existing restaurant on that corner is trying to park cars and leave. So 3 people leaving jumped into that little safety area and waited. Somebody else coming to the restaurant pulled in and tried to take a left in front of me while the light is turning green. So I don't know how we would get one more thing onto that property without a proper traffic study, which I asked for in our last goal setting session was a citywide traffic study, and my opponent's comments were the one with her traffic and transportation background and expertise to sell the rest of the council on, let's not do a citywide traffic study for planning purposes.
Well, Mr. Majors, we just had a traffic study given to us at 5th Avenue and Palmetto from a consultant that was retained by Houstons, and what were my words to them? He says it's functioning properly and under the correct levels of service. I agree it's not functioning properly. We've got a bridge that has timed openings, but it certainly backs up. And then we have the railroad at the other end. So it's a very, very tough area to move traffic through. I'm the one that has been the advocate to, if we have to, through eminent domain, take a slice of that property to put in the appropriate turn lane to get that traffic up 5th Avenue. So to say that I'm willing to rubber stamp and accept the congestion at that intersection, you're wrong. I am not, and I have a plan to make it better.
All right, thank you very much. Definitely appreciate the passionate and lively debate here. We're down to our last question. Now that we've all listened to both of you and your positions on various issues, I'd like to ask you this question in a different way. Tell us why residents should vote for you as opposed to your opponent. If we could start with you, we'll end with you.
Thank you. Well, the residents, I feel, should vote for me because, again, I've been in this community. I'm part of this community. I've been a great leader in this community. I'm a consensus builder. A lot of the wonderful things that have happened in this community has been under my leadership, and I've had a hand in doing it. My opponent wants to paint me as this, slash and burn, development crazed individual, but I will tell you that I wouldn't have been there for 12 years if I truly had been that way. The development issue is a concern for people, no question about it, and you need people on the council with the expertise and the consensus building tools to make sure that we keep the line on that we don't go over the top. Now, we're going to end up with a new council. We're having term limit turnovers in certain individuals. So we're going to have a lot of new people up there. And you need some institutional knowledge to know how we got to where we are and where we're going. And that's certainly my strong suit as well. You know, I'm in the communities, I'm a leader. My opponent, you know, he's a single guy, spends his weekends in Coral Gables. I don't see him at the schools. I don't see him on the ball fields. I don't see him at the houses of worship in our community. I am from the community. I have been there for 42 years. I've been dedicating my entire adult life to serving this community. I have been the deputy mayor for 5 years. I have 12 years of experience, and I'm the right person to lead this city forward through all the wonderful things and all the challenges that we're facing. And again, my opponent has an inherent conflict with this pension issue. He does. He is a firefighter for the county. His brother's a firefighter for the city. And he may be very well versed in pensions because he collects, well, he's going to collect one someday. The citizens need someone who is impartial representing them across that bargaining table. Those contracts open in September 30th of this year. The council that's elected on March 11th will be the ones representing the citizens at that table, and I'm the better choice to be doing that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask you this for a reason, but can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. Now that we've listened to both of your positions on various issues, tell us why residents should vote for you versus your opponent.
Okay, thank you very much. And because I am one, I am a resident, and so many of the people, not only at the local level but at the state and national level, feel disenfranchised by their government. And they say you can't. They told me you can't fight City Hall. They called me a Don Quixote who's tipping at windmills, when in fact you can. Now I certainly lost more than I won in the last 2 years, but I was very effective in my first 3 years. I'm a resident who didn't like what I was seeing happen at our city councils and the constant changing and relaxation of our development regulations to allow for more and more. We used to have a 40% open space requirement that was open from the ground to the sky. In 2003, they said, well, it's 40%, but it can be used under the walking areas, the loggias, and the brick areas where you drive cars. So it chipped away at that 40%. That's just one example of areas where I watched these councils, one after another, change things. So I ran because I am a resident, just as I take care of my homes. You know, my home, the boundaries of the city is an extension of my home, and I want to take care of the city. So in another forum, they asked, what political leader do you feel that you're most like? And I said Andrew Jackson. Now there's negative things about Andrew Jackson that I don't like, but Andrew Jackson was a member of the people. And at his inauguration, they carried furniture from the White House out onto the lawn because he opened it up to the public. I represent the public. I represent the homeowners and champion their desire, because the numbers show that people don't want Boca Raton to become the next major urban hub or metropolitan area. You know, the record speaks for itself on conflict of interest. The state says I don't have one. My track record is that I've taken $3.8 million away from police and fire, and my opponent has given them everything they have 14 times over 12 years. So I don't think there's an issue with conflict of interest. My opponent, husband, actually has a contract to manage, or did at the time, 1,400 residential units for the largest taxpayer in Boca Raton, who happens to own more units in Deerfield Beach. I'm sorry, in Broward County. So I don't see how that's not a conflict. And she recently received from the state a decision that she doesn't have a conflict because it's a separate county. But the fact that she has, her family has monetary gain and she can still vote, I don't have a conflict by law, and I have a track record of taking things away, not giving it to them. I'm out for the sustainability of our city. So, you know, the residents should choose me because I've been fighting for them from the beginning. I give them access to the government. I'm fighting on their behalf while they're at soccer games with their kids and working late hours, or they're a single parent. The people that have put me in office know that I'm one of them, and I've been there to fight for them. You know, the record speaks for itself. You know, I'm proud of my 5-year record on the council. You know, what else can I say? I'm a public servant over a politician. Mrs. Haney said I spend my weekends in Coral Gables. I can't tell you the last time that I was down there. That's just absolutely not true. So if you think about what we did here today, my opponent likes to say that she's attended your church function and she's been to your community picnic and she knows everybody in the community. I spoke in fact. I gave you numbers. I knew, you know, all of the statistics on pensions, the Meisner the lease agreement, on the beach deal, on the amphitheater. You know, I'm ready to lead and do what's right for the city. I'm not led. I was introduced at the first public gathering in a private home of about 75 people when I ran in 2009. The way I was introduced was, this is Anthony Mages. He doesn't owe anybody anything. And that's why I'm the right person to lead, because I have no bias. I'm not affiliated with any developer or I have no financial gain in creating a more beneficial pension, and in fact, I've taken money away.
Let me actually ask one final question. I before with the camera got going, I asked you both about endorsements by other organizations. You told me you had been endorsed by the Firefighters Union, and you told me you were endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce. Why do you think your opponent was endorsed by the Firefighters Union, and why do you think your opponent was endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce? You can start.
Okay. I've ran and won twice, and the first time I ran in 2009, I was not endorsed by the Police and Firefighters Union. And in my first debate, which is a matter of public record, somebody asked me, how do you feel about not receiving their endorsement? And my statement on record is that they are a special interest. And you should have heard the sigh in the crowd. And that's the way I felt about it. So the next time I was endorsed by them, because they're going to endorse in two ways. One is who supports them. The other is they endorse who they think is going to win. And that's how a lot of stuff gets done in the city, unfortunately. Nobody wants to make mad the council that's going to preside over them because they're job scared or they're afraid they might lose something or not get something they want. You know, I'm happy that I'm endorsed by the men and women who protect us at 2 a.m. and all hours of the night from medical emergencies and traffic emergencies and crime.
But do they expect you to stand up for their pension and their negotiating
You know what?
rights?
They know that I've stood up against any kind of misrepresentation and villainization of our public, you know, our public safety employees. You know, they've played politics in other cities. The town of Palm Beach dramatically changed their benefit structure for political reasons. They can't hardly hire anybody or keep any employees or keep their citizens well protected at night without paying people overtime to sit in those seats because they can't hire anybody. So do they expect something from me? No. The union president told me himself, we know no matter who gets elected, they're expecting us to make concessions after the election this coming October.
Why do you think your opponent was endorsed by the Chamber?
I will tell you why, because I've been told personally by many members who were at a conference table just like this one, that I won people over, and they realized that I'm much more reasonable than the anti-development guy that I was pinned as, or anti-business person, and that I won votes, that there were members of the board who argued with each other, and people said in fact that they're voting for me despite what the Chamber's endorsement was going to be. And they explained to me that the Chamber endorsement is based on a certain number of check boxes, and you either meet those check boxes or you don't. And some of those check boxes are, you know, workforce housing, the changes there. I could go on and on. You know that. The viewers know that if they're still watching with my long-winded answers. But we are making major changes to change this city into a transit-based metropolitan major urban hub. And there's legal vehicles to make that happen. One is called the Pattern Book. One is called the TDLC. One is supporting the zoning changes for these planned mobility areas. All of the stuff that I've jumped up and been the herald to say, this stuff is going to paralyze the city and be bad. It's not what the taxpayers want. I don't check those boxes. My opponent did, and she got the endorsement.
Okay, last word.
Well, I would say that, yes, my opponent is endorsed by the unions. He's a member of the unions. Over 33% of his campaign contributions are from union members. And the bottom line is they want him at the table when it comes time to open that contract. They do. The Chamber of Commerce has endorsed me. The Chamber of Commerce represents over 200 small businesses. The Chamber of Commerce is not the development community that my opponent wants to say it is. It is not. They are small businesses. They like my leadership. They know that the city has prospered well under my leadership, and that's why they have chosen me as their endorsee. I've not always been endorsed by the chamber. Actually, I've been endorsed by the police and fire over the years as well. But the truth is that I have a plan, I have a vision, I have experience in leadership. My opponent's never had a gavel in his hand. You know, I've been president of the Palm Beach County League of Cities. I'm currently chair of the Metropolitan Planning Organization, both regional, state as well, and our local. So I know what it is. I was appointed by the governor to the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. I mean, many of you here know me from seeing me around the county. We have some regional issues that need, you know, regional solutions, and we need to be part of that. And this anti-transit, and you know, there's a boogeyman behind every you know, approval to bring forward, you know, some decent premium transit to solve our transportation problems in our community. These are solutions that are before us, and it's not a big boogeyman and a bunch of density scare. My opponent has not been able to build consensus on the council. That's why he wants to tell you he's the lone vote and the lone ranger. But the truth is that he's not a consensus builder, and he's really been a bully through this whole campaign. You know, making fun of me and demeaning me with pictures dressed as a chauffeur. I mean, that, for someone who's been on the council for 12 years and served this city well, I mean, that is really demeaning. He set the tone for this campaign through negativity because he doesn't have his own record to run on. And if his service is anything in reflection to how he's running a campaign, if he wins, the city of Boca Raton is going to be in a lot of trouble.
Can I rebut? Because, you know, my opponent said that there is no boogeyman and that I'm against transit. And if you rewind the tape, you'll see that I said I support developing a robust transit society, you know, it's a transit system. What I don't support is the transit-oriented development. My opponent's resume would be outstanding if she represented your vision. Sitting on the MPO at the state and county level, the League of Cities at the state and county level, and all of her board service would be great if your vision was to regionalize Boca Raton. Boca Raton has always had a cachet. It's a brand that's known worldwide, and the residents that live there, it's a very special address. And I don't think that they want to regionalize. I think they like the fact that they feel that they are set apart, like cities like La Jolla and Beverly Hills in the town of Palm Beach. So if you like, I'm not saying my opponent is a bad person. I'm saying that my opponent, you know, you can like a person and not agree with their politics. Her politics is to regionalize. This is in response, certainly it's advertising, but the facts and everything that is on there, her voting record, and it cites the source of where all of those numbers come from. Forget the pictures that a PR person put on there. Read the numbers that are on there and read the source. It says it comes from the voters' file. That's in response to a commercial that my opponent did where she got on TV and said, I voted no on overdevelopment way more than I voted yes, when in fact in 6 years she's never voted no. On pensions, she was endorsed by police and fire every single time and voted yes 14 times.
Well, and here's a pictorial that he voted for this building, so he's blaming me. So. Thank you all. This has been wonderful.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. We're very happy to have both of you here, Sandy, Mr. Magis, and Rosemary, Chan, and especially you, our viewers. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.